All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome today and happy spooky season, of course. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar, Advancing Education, Driving Social Change Through Learning. We are so excited to have you here today at this hour, even on a gloomy, rainy day. So just good to take some time and be together. So as you're watching, just please be sure to use that chat and tell us who you are, where you're from, your role in education, and feel free to drop your X, formerly known as Twitter, handle so we can follow each other and create a little network. So also during the webinar, feel free to use the chat area if you have any questions. We'll read and react to those at the very end or as they come. And you can also post questions using that Q&A feature. We'll kind of gather those and monitor them and address anything that needs address at the end. So if you can't see any of the slides or you're having some technical difficulties, close the webinar and rejoin it using the link sent to your email. If you're using two monitors, make sure to check behind one of those open windows and see if one of the Zoom screens is hiding. And just so you know, an on-demand version of the webinar will be available at the same link that you used to join today and your registration link. So if you wanted to watch those later on, you're more than welcome to find those. And just a reminder that you can visit forward-edge.net/webinars for all of our webinar recordings. And of course, feel free to share what you're learning on Twitter, or X as we call it now, using the hashtag FEK12. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Tori, and I'm super pumped to be here today with my colleague, Celine. So thanks for joining us, Celine. I'm an instructional design coach at Forward Edge, and we're going to have Celine present our content for today. So keep your eyes on the chat for any of that information, any links, resources, things that might be dropped and shared. Now, a little bit about who we are at Forward Edge. We are a K-12 educational technology company. And when I say that, I mean we do everything from selling hardware to managing the networks that we provide to even running and pulling cables for monitors, projectors, and AV equipment. Now, a little over 3 years ago, we began focusing heavily on the curriculum and integration side of things. So once you have that technology in the hands of teachers and students, how can you use it effectively? In the C&I department, as we're all former teachers, we come with an educational background and a variety of classroom experiences. So the bottom line is we offer visioning and planning services, provide professional development, and we serve as on-site integration coaches for schools. So with all of that being said, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing panelist, Celine, and I'm excited for her to share what she's got today.
Thank you, Tori. I'm super excited, everyone. Welcome to today's topic of driving social change through learning. And we're going to start today with our foundation, and we're thinking about those ISTE standards. So starting with the citizen standard, where we're creating those positive experiences. We're also looking at the collaborator standard, where we're demonstrating cultural competency. We're taking a look at the designer role, where we're creating those innovative learning environments, and also taking a look at the role of a facilitator. So how can we foster student ownership of learning? In today's agenda, we're going to start with defining what social change in education is. And alongside that, we're going to be looking at making a space for change. So how can we target students' needs and customize those learning experiences? In what ways can we also look at social justice integration and discovering strategies to infuse that social justice into teaching for students to think more critically? And with all that, we'll also take a look at the community collaboration aspect. So looking at different techniques and ways that students can partnership and really make an impactful change in the world around us. So let's take a look at the first tool, which is defining what social change in education is. While there's a ton of different definitions of what this might look like, we're focusing on how we would rethink the way student structures are in their ways of learning and experiences, and how we can navigate modernized teaching practices. In addition to that, we're looking at these spaces where, real world topics are a thing now. How can students modernize their demonstration of learning? and in what ways they can reach out into their community and collaborate in those spaces. And then in addition to that, can students lead in those spaces of their learning as well? So behind that, the inspiration to sum this all up might look something like this. We know that students are exposed to real world scenarios outside of the walls of the classroom. We don't know where they're going or what they're looking at outside of the classroom. But we know that we as teachers have the power to make a change, and we can include these experiences in the classroom and also assist students with being able to process these experiences over time. So let's start with creating a space for change. And I want you to think about this question. What was your first year of teaching like? I know for me, it was a wild ride. One thing to note is that every teacher's journey is different. But one thing we do have in common is that all of our students have a voice and a story that deserves to be heard. Students have ideas and topics, and they have a lot of things that they want to share with us sometimes. So I would like to start today by talking about my journey through education, and we're going to feature Moana, one of my personal favorite Disney movies of all time. Hopefully you all have seen it. And I'm thinking about my first year of education and what that kind of looked like. Right, I'm walking through, I've just finished college. The first few months, I'm feeling empowered. I'm making my bulletin board, setting up my classroom, putting those learning goals together. We might start by meeting the parents and the students, right? Then we're a few months in, we're getting the classroom management in order, initiating all the learning practices and really diving into content, maybe trying to get a hold of life in general and meal prepping, hopefully if we have time, right? Along the way, we might meet some colleagues or a veteran teacher that's kind of guiding us along the way. For me, I had a lot of those support spaces as well. And everything's kind of pushing through, right? And my biggest wall was meeting this one specific student. And in a lot of ways, in this scene of Moana, I felt just like this scene. So noticing one specific student that had an entire lack of interest in school, they didn't want to engage or communicate with me, with parents or administration. And they really had more of a concern with the outside world versus what was going on in the classroom. This was my standing ground. I knew that I had to make an effective change for this student in order to reach them. I wasn't sure how, right? So I'm thinking about this time period as students were also in this moment being exposed to a lot of social justice and civil unrest. So aside from the student not wanting to engage, everyone around me was also running to me and trying to figure out ways to navigate what was going on in the media and the news. There seemed to be a lack of overall interest. And these were some of the pinpoint moments. And we'll introduce this student later, Izzy, who inspired the change for me. And you might have run into some of these points as well in your teaching career. So whether you saw a lack of engagement or excitement for learning, maybe you personally felt that teaching content felt a little bit limited for students. Maybe there was a lack of diversity or inclusion within the teaching materials or the resources. And also knowing that the students have a need and wanting to provide a solution for their needs. For me, I knew that as a teacher, I had the power to effectively make a difference in education. And all it took was believing and having that belief to make that change. So before we proceed, I want you to know that you do have the power to make a difference in the world of education. You can be a leader in helping that student grow and flourish. So where do we start? For me, that looked a lot like brainstorming how to modernize a learning space. So some of these questions came about in my practice. What do the students lack and currently need? Can I design a course or lesson that implements a key learning focus? How flexible am I able to work with my current administration? Will they be able to support my vision, right? What kind of impact will this course have on students over the course of years? Will I be able to keep up with being able to make all these changes over time? In addition to that, I took another pause before reflecting on all these overwhelming questions, right? And being able to respond to those questions. So kind of settling in, just like when Moana is looking out into the ocean and knowing that there's able to be change out there, right? So I know that students need this. So I'm going to create what? I have support through this, and I will use this to what? And I'm sure that integrating social change topics into my learning space will, so on. So in this space, for me, it looked a lot like, how can I integrate social change and social justice into a learning space for students to grow and expand their knowledge and also have a space to express themselves? So starting with the first step, which is the research and development. I knew that if I wanted to propose this to my district leaders, that I needed something tangible for them to see my vision come to life. So a lot of that came from building what the course would look like. I created a syllabus, and that included everything from the course description to the materials the students would be learning, to the standards that the district was really focusing on for the school year, class policies, the grading structure, everything you can think of that a class would look like. I wanted to bring it to life in this syllabus. Another great tool is looking at some of the texts that are out there. I wish, honestly, I had this text when I was developing the course. This book came out in 2021. It's called Textured Teaching by Lorena. And in this text, she talks about how you can teach towards the goal of social justice and cultural justice integration for students. And she targets how students kind of develop their sense of the world at a young age, and they grow it over time, and how you as a teacher can implement different strategies to help them unpack their ideas in a different way. So when they're going out into the world and interacting, they have a different way of processing world interactions. A very interesting read if you have time to take a look at that. It is available on Amazon, I believe. Step 2. So now you have a baseline for what you want your course, your lesson, your design, your implementation to look like. Now you're going to go out and find your support and your resources. So this could look a lot like starting at home base. Maybe you're going out and finding a curriculum director or a leader within the school district that can support you. Maybe it's more so reaching out to colleagues. For me, that was going to one of my English teachers and showing her what I put together and allowing her to give me feedback. Maybe it's going out to the public libraries or local colleges and seeing what speakers or activities that they have available, and if they're willing to collaborate with your school district to expand on student learning. There's a lot of local businesses and organizations that allow these resources for free. So just kind of digging around and seeing what's out there. Another huge thing for me was not being afraid to create my own resources. So being that the district was very full on students being able to explore different learning strategies, I knew that I had the freedom to customize ways for my students to learn. Sometimes that looked like me going out and meeting Angie Thomas, the author of The Hate U Give. Because my course was focused on social justice, I wanted to make sure the students saw that I was going about my way to meet people like this and learn, giving her the idea of the course that I created for that inspiration. And if you don't have any of these resources available to you in your district, there are a ton of online resources that are available to you as well. Places such as learningforjustice.org and edchange.org have a ton of recommended book lists, learning texts, everything from film kits to printable posters that you can have for free that teach about social justice. So if you're not sure where to start, these are great online resources to take a look at. Another amazing organization is Teaching for Change, and they specify specifically with the social justice aspect of learning in the classroom. And they're doing a ton of different projects, and they also have a space for you to connect with them, and they'll reach out to you to give you some of those resources as well. So as we're diving into more content, we're thinking about how we have the course or the lesson initiated, right? We're looking for the resources. Now we're setting sail into seeing how we can now teach the class. For me, that looked a lot like starting with two groups of students. My district enabled me to start the course, and I was on my own in figuring out how I would get students to interact and engage and keep the course going for a long-term run. So that started with me just peeking and figuring out what the students' interests were. And a lot of that had to do with PBL structures and interacting with the community around us. Sometimes that looked like reaching out to local artists at colleges and having them come in and talk to students who were interested in running their own businesses. Or when we talked about spoken word poetry, actually bringing in a spoken word poet to discuss how to use social justice in their poems to reach and access the world around them. And sometimes that meant leveraging technology. So using pieces like social media, which we'll talk about here in a second, or green screen activity, and having students act and sing and engage and collaborate on different projects that would lead to outside activity outside of the walls of the classroom. So thinking about how you might tailor to student interest on the social media aspect, being that we're in the peak of technology being implemented in a lot of different ways, this is a great way to think outside of the box. So in the past, I've experimented with being able to teach digital citizenship through social media platforms. Recently, the most current one would be TikTok, but allowing students a space to learn how to build profiles and build content through these spaces. And it might be more of a controlled idea, or creating an account for students to use within your classroom, and really showing them how to prepare for the outside world using a lot of these different social media platforms as well. Another great tool would be commonsense.org. They have a lot of resources and tools that you can use to teach digital citizenship as well. If you're looking for more of an educational-based platform and you're thinking about ways to effectively use social change as a topic for conversation, Nearpod has a lot of different topics that allow students to explore various topics and discussion points as well. So if you're thinking about ways to even initiate a conversation around one of these topics, my discussion starter was also, or always, what are your thoughts on this topic? And really that allows students a space to communicate with one another and also really think about what their opinions are on various different worldviews. When we're thinking about another way to initiate change in your learning space, there's a ton of different ways that students can differentiate their learning through project and assignment ideas. So using those social media platforms, possibly, that you are teaching them about to build a brand or content, and teach them about the role of content creation and allowing them to build their brand. Maybe you're using YouTube or movies to critically think or research. Sometimes that, for me, it looked like creating a showcase for students to create art, to develop their own conference topics, and not only build a presentation, but also allow students within the school district to come and interact with what they created. So they were creating their own topics of conversation, they were using their own resources, and they were providing a space to display and express themselves on various different ideas. So we're moving on to some of our final points here. When we're thinking about the whole point of this, the student impact is what counts the most. So allowing students to take over essentially their learning has a lot of different benefits. And one of the few benefits here, engagement, empathy, when we're thinking about connection and collaboration, customized learning experiences, the sense of purpose, passion, and ideation, these are all things that will help students flourish over time. If you're looking for a way to get started with this, the Genius Hour is a great way to get started with student exploration and fostering their passions. It is essential for K through 12 exploration, and you can look for that on the book or on Genius Hour geniushourguide.org. In this time period, students are researching and utilizing different tools to research topics that interest them. And this can go over the course of a few days. You can make it a semester-long project. There's really no limitation on how you want to go about it, but it does allow students to take ownership of their learning. The great thing about Genius Hour is that it can be utilized at any point in time. So if you're thinking about how you might be able to squeeze this into your curriculum practice, you can use it essentially for maybe the first 10 minutes of their learning, or towards the end of the day when you're wrapping up a couple ideas and giving them a space for them to learn and create and think over time, and maybe giving them a space to express or show what they learned towards the end of their semester. So when we're thinking about some of the last steps in making the shift for consistent change, I wanted to introduce you all to Izzy. So Izzy was one of the many reasons why I made that brave change. He was the big monster in the face of education for me. He had a lack of interest and didn't really want to engage within the learning community. Throughout the semester of me teaching this new course, even though I had all these different activities available to him and ways to express those ideas, he had a passion for music. So he would often ask me if he was able to produce or sing a song for a certain assignment. And while I had the capability to say yes or no in that moment, I made the decision to say yes. And this allowed him to express himself. And for one of his final projects, he was able to rap one of his songs specified to the content about social change. And what we found is that we had an entire concert at the end of our semester right in our classroom. So in the last steps of making this change, think about what inspires you. Think about what inspires your students to grow, and think about ways that you can create a space for you both to evolve together. I know for me, being able to see that smile on Izzy's face towards the end of everything that we had gone through in the semester was amazing. And it let me know that I made the right decision in taking the step to make a difference. So now it's your turn. Think about all the steps that we've discussed today. Start with finding your why. The students are typically my why, but what in your specific school district do you see that's an issue that you can make a difference in? Find your support. That might be a local business. It might be your curriculum leaders. It might just be your colleagues. Think about how you might build your resource library. What tools or free online tech tools that you can use to really help build what it is that you're trying to create. Go on and create and implement. I feel like one of the things that holds us back is that fear of what might happen. But once you are able to create it and show off what you have, you'll be surprised at what the result may be. The last step is setting sail with your students into the ocean of change and allowing that to flourish over time. So thank you all for joining today's webinar. I hope that with these resources and tools that you are empowered today to make some sort of difference and make a change within your community. And I'll toss it back to Tori.
All right. Celine, I'm always just like so blown away by how much information can be packed into such a short time. You did, that was great. And I have definitely written down some new books that I'm going to add to my collection. So thanks for that. I'm always down to grab a new book.
I'm so excited.
So I also have to say, I love the Moana theme, because if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it.
Please do.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we all have an Izzy or a couple of Izzies in our life.
Yeah.
And it's always that moment that kind of catalyzes our change to kind of take those risks as educators. So I'm pretty sure I'm already getting comments that everybody's like, thank you. I learned so much. So, I mean, no big deal. You did amazing.
Oh,
so
thank
thanks.
you so much. Thank you.
So now, while I go over some of the Forward Edge services we have, go ahead and drop some of the coolest things you learned today into the chat if you haven't already. So if you are interested in earning or renewing your Google Education certifications, so your level 1, your 2, your trainer, we offer comprehensive training experiences in person, virtual, and led by Google certified trainers. So that's an amazing thing. And if you are needing to meet some specific classroom needs, you can utilize our Anytime, Anywhere EduBadge program. So through badges, you can learn about various topics and tools at your own pace. And these are strategies, ideas, tools that you can turn around and use in your classroom immediately to directly impact student learning. You can also earn points while earning badges, and these can be turned into contact hours or graduate credits. So another amazing resource we have for you. And then since we are talking, everybody's talking about cyber training and cyber tips and cybersecurity, we have a lot of teacher training videos on our website here at that link on the screen. So definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. And then, as we've talked about today, especially building our resources, building our kind of community and family of people, if you are someone that's looking for a coaching community and you want to add tried and true strategies to your toolbox, you can learn how to market yourself. You can learn more about planning PDs and utilizing coaching models. Coaches Camp might be the place for you. I know it was a really great experience for me. So we have other Coaches Camps coming up. So keep your eyes peeled for that information going forward. Truly an amazing experience if you really want to find that group of people and that support system that is so crucial to how we do our jobs. And then, of course, we have all kinds of coaching resources as well, our EduCoach network, which is amazing. And just if we're looking again for that community and that core group of people to support our work, look no further, because here at Forward Edge, we have so many coaching resources from our podcast to the camp to mentorships to our network. There's something here for everybody. Yes, we do love our coaches. And don't forget, we have our webinar every third Thursday of the month. And coming up next month, I'm super excited for harnessing gamification for effective learning with our very own Mateus Hulsa, who will be here to show us some more amazing things in the quickest 30 minutes of your life. So don't forget to sign up and register for that so we can meet back here in November and see what Mateus has for us. Now, before we go, I'm just going to check the chat for any questions. And Celine, again, seeing so much love for the things that you've presented for us today. And since we don't have any questions, we're going to go ahead and enjoy the rest of our gloomy October day. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you next month and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Celine.
Thank you.